franchise secrets, Erik Von Horn.
Hey, welcome to this episode of Franchise Secrets. I have Rich Moyer on, who I was almost an advisor to his brand. He's got a really cool brand called Hoppin Brands, and we went into his story. He was a PGA Professional at 22, figured out he was on the wrong side of that equation, got a sales job through his connections, through the PGA, and then ended up getting into the construction business, sold that for a very nice amount of money. We got into some of the details on that. Started an ice cream shop, like homemade ice cream with a secret recipe, grew that through just expansion with his business partners as a mom and pop shop, didn't franchise it. And he gets into the reasons why. Then eventually started Hoppin Brands, which uses technology and great branding and other types of things, as serving beer and cocktails and things like that. So really cool story, really like him, and I think you'll enjoy this episode with Rich. Rich, welcome to the show, man.
Thanks for having me.
You weren't sure if we started, were you?
No.
We started. So we've known each other for a bit, got introduced through a mutual friend in the franchising world. And you've got a cool brand, Hoppin, but then getting to know you and a bit of your story, you got a really cool story that I think will resonate with a lot of entrepreneurs out there that maybe started out like you did outside of franchising and then got into franchising, either as a franchisee or franchisor. So I think this is going to be a fun, interesting conversation because you still have businesses outside of franchising. So let's see, where do we start? Why don't we start like how you got started? How were you always an entrepreneur? Like go back to the beginning.
Yeah. I mean, throughout high school, I played varsity sports as a freshman. So varsity golf, baseball, and basketball. And it just led me to be, one, very competitive. Grew up with younger parents. My mom was 18 when she had my brother, 21 when she had me. So both my mom and dad, super young. But they worked really hard. They told us if we ever want anything in life, we're going to have to go do it ourselves and find a way to make it happen. So nothing was ever really handed to us, but they were always there to support us. Basketball was always the dream, but unfortunately I was undersized and just didn't fit the competitiveness to make it to the next level. Golf was the next kind of dream. So I went to college, got into the golf industry, became a PGA professional, and that led me to realizing that I was on the wrong side of the counter. Every one of my members were either in sales or they own their own companies. So I just started picking their brains. Like, what do you guys do for a living? How'd you get started? And every single one of them that come in, I'd just try and find a way to get out of the golf industry and be on the other side of the counter. That led me into sales.
So like what side were you on? And then like was there a person or several people that you talked to that made you realize you were on the wrong side? So what side were you on? And what was it that made you realize you were on the wrong side?
Yeah. So I was a club professional. So at local members or like private country clubs in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. So I was on inside the club every Monday through Sunday. I mean, it was 50, 60, 70 hour weeks because it's open every holiday. It's open every weekend. And the members that were coming in were in sales or they worked for themselves, and they were there Tuesdays, they were there Sundays, they were there every holiday playing golf. So I'm sitting there like, I got into the industry because I love the game, but I'm not playing because I'm working. And that's where I started to ask them questions of what you guys do for a living, how'd you get started? And I realized that sales typically gave people the opportunity to have the freedom to do what they want, but also make money that maybe they shouldn't have been, or didn't have the capabilities of making in just a regular 9 to 5. And that's what led me to, all right, if I start in sales, if you're in sales, especially outside sales, it really gives you the ability to be self-motivated, understand that if you want it, you have to go get it. Nobody's going to hand you a book that says this is how you go get sales. You have to go be your own boss and be kind of an entrepreneur mindset when you're in sales, even though you might have the structure of a bigger company. So that's where I really was like, all right, how do I get in with these sales jobs? And it just kind of worked out that a member at the time, and when I moved to Charlotte, North Carolina, was like, hey, I'll get you in with our company. It was inside sales. I did that for 6 months, crushed it, got into outside sales with another buddy after I had some experience in sales. He's like, just get a few months of experience, we'll bring you in. And that led me into outside sales, which then you just start to see the freedom of time and money, and understanding how important it is to be able to have that freedom. And then that led me into meeting my first mentor, which helped me start my first company. And that was in the construction
So looking
world.
back, what was it about you that had him take a chance on you getting your first sales job? As you look back and kind of reflect on that, what was it about you that really got his interest to take that chance on you?
Yeah, I think it was, I always say people do business with people they like, right? And in sales, most people don't like to hear the word sales or say, oh, I got a salesperson coming to me. And it was just a constant follow-up of, hey, you guys have something open, but soft follow-up, not me really trying to push them but it was our relationship before me asking for a job. So we became to like each other. He understood who I was. People do business with who they like. And he brought me in after really getting to know me and understanding, this guy's a good relationship-wise, and I'd like to give him an opportunity.
Other people at the same time doing the same thing that you were doing there, did they kind of have that same mindset as you? Did they get out on the other side, like you said, or did a lot of them stay there?
At the golf industry?
Yeah.
Actually, everybody that I went to school with, I don't know really, there's maybe one or two that are still in the golf industry, and they were just kind of career golf guys. They were actually more on the fast track of getting their PGA card and getting into positions that once they got locked in, you can get some decent cush jobs in that industry, but you're still working crazy hours. But I'd say 90% of the guys I went to school with are all in sales or doing their own thing.
So I'm a huge believer in sales. And I think, I have friends like Dave Allred. He was with Vivint and then started investing in a ton of real estate. He's been on the podcast before, and he was doing door-to-door sales and, builds things like the montages and Top Golf and things like that now. And they go back and listen to his episode. He got started knocking on doors. I got started in sales early on for the first franchise that I started. And I remember sending an email to the founder and said, hey, I want to be on that franchise development team. I want to sell franchises. And he said, we'll give you a chance. And I took him up on it. And there was a handful of us that first year that were franchisees and wanted to start selling franchises. And I took that job because I knew, one, you could make some good money. And then two, I could get mentored by this guy. He was always meeting with all of us salespeople, franchise development, whatever you want to say. But he was meeting every day with us, and we were perfecting our craft, and we were getting better and better at helping people. There's more consultative sales in that position, but it was sales. And I made more money than I ever had doing that at that point in my early 20s, making six figures in your early 20s when, never made that before, but that's sales. And then I had a guy that used to work for me at one point, and he needed to get, I needed to kick him out of the nest. So he got kicked out of the nest, super great guy, and no college degree, just a great guy. And 2 years later, he calls me all the time, but he's like, Erik, I'm making really good money. Well, how much are you making, man? He's like, I think it was like 300,000 plus, and selling, and no college degree, no special anything, inside. I mean, no special anything. He didn't have an inside track. He didn't have a special connection. He just hustled, and he realized he was really good at it. And so now he can go on and do so many other things. So I love the fact that, you and I both, learned how to sell. And I think that's something that anybody can do. My friend Ryan Casey started with Cutco, and that's not even a really good, like you're selling, but he was shy and not very good at sales. And now he does sales training and a great Orange Theory franchisee. So anyway, when we were talking earlier about sales, I'm like, this is something that we need to hone in on, because this is something so many people can do. And it's a gateway into so many other things, just like you. Attention, franchisors and franchisees, there are two really important resources that I want to share with you that will help you avoid costly mistakes and increase your enterprise value. The first is our free Facebook group. It's a community that has over 4,000 franchisees and franchisors in it. When somebody asks a question, they get honest and authentic answers from multiple perspectives. You can join the group for free over at franchisesecrets.com/Facebook. The second resource I want to share with you is if you're a franchisee and you want to be around a community of successful Zs and other brands and in other industries, this is why I created the Franchisee Mastermind. If you want access to the best single and multi-unit owners to know what they're doing, or if you want to be around other multi-brand owners, then you'll want to check out my Franchisee Mastermind. The reason why people join is they want access to my Rolodex, my connections, to each other. They want a shortcut success, both short-term and long-term. Links will be in the show notes or at scalablefranchise.com. So what's next? You got that sales job, started crushing it there. What's next?
Yeah. Next was, I was actually trying to sell an individual to bring him into the company that I was selling. And just a constant follow-up, right? Timing was never right, but I think I probably followed up with him for 3-4 months. So just soft follow-ups. And he was like, you know what? Why don't I mentor you? He's like, I've done something in other states, just very successful guy. He's like, you have the mindset and the ability to do something yourself. So he was the one that kind of mentored me on my first company. And it really was just, if you can sell, you can do anything. So we basically created a company that was a sales team for smaller subcontractors in the construction industry. And they were all great contractors, great work, but they didn't know how to go get the jobs themselves. So we became their sales team and we brokered the service. And it was anything from small jobs of pressure washing concrete all the way up to full insulation jobs, drywall jobs, paint jobs on multifamilies, high rises, hospitals, hotels. And that snowballed. I mean, I started the company very little money. We did 1.8 million our first year, 3.6 million our second year, and then 6.5 million the third year. Ended up selling it 2 months into my fourth year of business for a nice amount of money. And like you said,
Can you give us any more besides a nice amount of money?
Yeah, a few million, several million. So
nice.
Yeah, I mean, sales gave me.
And that hit the bank. How did it feel when that hit the bank account?
I think I still have the screenshot. Yeah, you make your first several mil. I mean, your first mil is like seeing it in the bank account. Obviously, I made that over time with the construction company, but it was never all in the bank account. It was accounts receivable. Throughout the year, you make it, but you end up paying taxes on it, and that business process of just keeping in the business to continue growing. But yeah, I think I still have the screenshot of it. I actually just recently sold a few commercial real estate properties last year and had that kind of similar bank account number. So yeah, it's a feeling that I never thought I would ever see. But again, just being in sales gave me the opportunity to make more money than I ever thought I would make. And it's just a total different mindset once you start to see those numbers and you see that you can really do those things and still have freedom. I think that's the most important thing. And my goal is, how many people can I help along the way?
So when you had that construction company, did you have anybody have a construction background building stuff, or more of a sales background?
Yeah, no construction background. Actually, one of my first clients became a really good friend, and we still play golf together and go on golf trips all the time together. We walked into his office. It was me, my buddy that was originally with us in the company from the beginning, and he told me a few years later, he said, you guys had no idea what you were looking at with the plans when I pulled them out. So he pulled out plans for an upfit and a high rise in downtown Charlotte. And he told him, he's like, I just liked you guys and figured that you had the ability to get it done, even though you didn't know what you were looking at. So yeah, no background. It was just, we were leaning on people that had the experience, understood how to do the jobs, and we were just selling.
So were you like the general contractor and then would sub out everything? But it doesn't sound like you were an actual general contractor. You were just getting things to sub out. I don't fully understand this yet. So
yeah,
explain it to a fourth grader.
Yeah. So I was not the general contractor. I didn't have a GC license. All I was we always said, a construction arm for the general contractor. So the project managers of a like a 300 or 250 unit apartment complex or a high rise, a 20, 30 story high rise, we would work directly with their project manager, and that PM would say, it got to a point where the PM, if they needed something, it was call Rich. So they would call me, I would then source it out to my contractors, figure out which one of my contractors could fit that job or do it, whether if it was pressure washing, post-construction cleaning, just punch work of fixing things throughout the entire project. So it just really, I was just a sales team. For the construction side, I was their support arm. Hey, Rich, I need this. For my contractors, I was their sales team. I was just a broker in the middle that traded paper. I would charge them X, I'd pay my contractors X, and I would take the middle or the extra piece of it. So just a broker of services, kind of like franchise development consultants and brokers. They're just kind of in the middle. Yep. They take a piece of the pie, and that's what we did, and we grew it really, really quickly.
Who bought it? Like, what kind of person is a buyer for that company? Just another entrepreneur or somebody that was in the industry?
I had two buyers. One was at a big company out of Florida, and they wanted me to stay on for an additional 2 years and actually retain some equity, but I was just done. I was ready to move on and go to the next thing. And then a guy from Atlanta who moved to Charlotte. He had a very successful residential construction company, general contractor in Atlanta, and lost it all in 08, 09. So he rebuilt kind of everything in his life and got back to a point to where he wanted to own his own business again, but didn't want to start from scratch. So he took it over, everything that I told him he needed to do, which was get rid of the employees, kind of dumb down our operation side and just focus on subbing stuff out. He did. And now he's in Nashville, Tennessee, Atlanta, South Carolina, North Carolina. So he's expanded really, really fast, which is good to see, right? I mean, you build something, you want to see it continue to grow, like a child, 18, to get out the house, and you want to see them successful. So to know that it turned into continual growth means that, we built something that was good.
So a lot of people will exit a business like that, a franchise, whatever it is. There's an exit that takes place. What do you do with your money? Like, what's the mindset at that point when you have a good amount of money in your bank account because of a sale, not just because of cash flow? What do you start doing with that money?
Yeah. Ever since I was young, I bought my first house when I was 20. So real estate was always very intriguing to me. It was just a little bit harder to get into when I was 20, 25. Once I sold my company, I invested into several commercial real estate. I got out of the residential stuff, invested in a commercial, which has been super, super profitable and also a great tax depreciation offset. So for me, it was those two things, right? Where do I reinvest this to make it from a few million to 10, 15, 20 million? And opportunities kind of come to you when you are speaking with the right people and doing the right things. And commercial real estate was one. Some properties I bought my own, some I invested in with partners. Ice cream shops, we had already had one homemade ice cream shop in Charlotte. We figured let's just continue to expand that because it was more profitable than what we originally thought. And then the opportunity of Hoppin was founded. Technology was brought to me from a friend at the time, and that was really where it was like, this is something that could be really cool and something that Charlotte doesn't have.
So I love it. I love how one thing kind of leads to another, and hopefully a lot of franchise buyers out there, like, you might be working a job and hearing him talk about freedom, or, you might have a business that's franchisable. And, he didn't have franchising experience before he started Hoppin Brands. He had experience, but not as a franchisor. And that's super common for franchisors. I talk to franchisors all the time, and we're helping them at Front Street, grow and build enterprise value in their brands. And I talk to more brands that they're just starting to explore franchising, and I have a lot of fun conversations with entrepreneurs like Rich as they get into franchising, and their stories are fun, just like this, the roads that people take to either become a franchisor or a franchisee. So you mentioned ice cream before you started Hoppin. We got a great ice cream, like mom and pop ice cream shop here in Spearfish, South Dakota. You got to check out Leon's. It's so good. They're always packed. But give us a sense of, like, why did you start an ice cream shop, and how has that grown? And then why not franchise that and versus franchising Hoppin? So start with the ice cream shop.
Yeah, ice cream was one of my best friends when I lived in Myrtle Beach, moved to Charlotte. His uncle has homemade ice cream shops in Florida, and his uncle's always told him, you need to open up an ice cream shop. So he gave him his family recipe. He went down there for like 3 weeks, learned everything, came back. He's like, hey, well, you invest in the idea. And I was at a point where I had just kind of listed my construction company for sale. I was stressed. Construction is just very time consuming and draining, and it's never happy, right? Nobody's ever calling you and saying, hey man, I appreciate everything you did for me. It's always next and yelling at you. Why aren't people showing up? I was like, ice cream could be fun, minimal cost up front. I think it cost me $50,000 to open up our first location. And the ice cream was phenomenal, homemade, and it just became a staple in Charlotte. So for me, it was something fun to invest in. I had the money and something that I could just kind of relieve some of the stress of the construction world and get into something a little bit more engaging and fun, and actually with just people coming in. And that ice cream shop, what I thought was just going to be one location and fun, has turned into 6 locations and probably another. I know we just signed, or we have a lease in hand for one uptown Charlotte and then 2 more in the works. So next year we'll have probably 3 or 4 more opening. And it's just been, for me, more high level financial and more, I guess, consulting or advisor side. My 2 partners run the day-to-day. They handle all the operations and day-to-day stuff. And even them, I mean, they both have 2-year-old or 5-year-old girls, and they have all the freedom in the world. And that's how we built it. We built amazing teams to help support us and grow it with us. But the goal is helping individuals and having the freedom.
So I'm guessing the profits from the first one, the second one, the third one are helping open up the other ones. Are you guys still putting a lot of money into it as you grow and expand that, or the profits, you growing through profits?
Yeah, we haven't put any money into it. We actually just expanded our production. So we did pull out our first bank loan, just about $100,000 to expand our production side, because we do have the growth coming. And outside of that, no, everything kind of stays in the company. We actually still take distributions and with our growth, which is phenomenal, right? It's something that you can only dream of when you're growing a company, is that the company funds itself and you don't have to continually putting money into it or pulling a big loan from a bank or private investor. You retain the equity and continue to grow. So that's the piece.
So why not franchise that? You got something that's working. Why didn't you guys franchise that?
Yeah. So kind of rule with franchising for me is like, if it's an easy startup, minimal cost to startup, and you can grow organically, with your own money, it just makes more sense to do it internally and corporately. We want to keep that more regional, and it's not something we're looking to grow across the country. And $50,000 to $150,000 open is nothing. Franchising Hoppin makes a lot of sense because it's $800 to $1.2, $1.3 to open. So to really make that happen organically or corporately, you'd have to pull in big investors and give up a lot of equity, and you just can't move as fast. Franchising that just made a lot more sense just because of the upfront cost. And I like the community side of what we're doing with Hoppin. So being able to find local operators in the community that can be community driven in each city is important for us.
So when did you start that? Because you didn't start it as a franchise. You just started it as a business, right?
Yeah, December 2017. So when I sold my company, February 2017, rolled in the money, found the location, opened up December 2017, our first location. People were coming in from all over. Hey, this is amazing. How do we open one of these in our state or our city? And that really got the ball rolling of, man, this actually is a very franchisable business. It's very simple. It's minimal staff, minimal overhead. Our technology eliminates 95% of a bar owner's headache, and we don't have food. We partner with food partners, local food operators to handle the food. So that ball started really rolling in my head that this is franchisable. Let's get started on it. And that was probably in 2019. We opened up our second location, which was a different concept with Duck Pin Bowling. And I was like, let's just look at the franchising side. And then 2020 hit, pandemic hit, pulled the horses back on that, and just stayed afloat, right? We tried to weather the storm, watched a lot of our competitors go under because of where everything was. And in our state, everybody kind of got shut down. We ended up staying open, just fighting that battle. And yeah, and then 2020 went past, 2021 went past. We finally got through the pandemic. Things started to get back to normal. And September of 2022 was when all of our FDD stuff was kind of finalized a few months prior, but our website finally got done. We finally were in a position that we can go market this. And our first location opened up in Rock Hill, South Carolina. But we had already had conversations with them earlier in 2022. So they were already starting the process of finding real estate. So that's why they kind of fell in a little bit quicker after us franchising, technically having marketing our franchise.
So what advice would you give somebody that has a brand and they've thought about it, and they have customers saying, hey, you should franchise it? That's not automatically like, oh, I should franchise it and it will be successful just because my customers want it. You started thinking about things with technology and build out costs and why you want to expand and how you want to expand and why someone would want to buy it. And, so you're thinking through a lot of things, but what advice would you give somebody that's thinking about franchising their successful business?
Yeah, I wish somebody would have given me this advice, right? Finding, and whether if it's somebody like you guys at Front Street, finding an advisor or somebody that's been through it from the early stages, right? Because we're kind of, our first year last year was really kind of working backwards of getting things in place that I wish we would have known before we started franchising. Because you think you have the processes in place, you think you have the documentation, you think you have everything that you need to franchise until the time comes and you're like, wow, there's still a lot of organization that we have to have. So find an advisor or somebody prior to franchising that can actually look at your company and say, yes, you do have a franchisable business, but these are the things you're going to need to really, really have a good foundation to grow, and not feel like there's going to be cracks in the foundation where you're like, oh shit, I just learned that I need to do this and be more successful for my future franchisees. And that'll never change, right? You're always going to learn stuff with every single one you open. But if you can have somebody that's been through it from day one, whether if it's Front Street or a different advisor that's been through franchising, is definitely super, super helpful. Something I wish we had.
So what people don't know is you and I were first talking about me being an advisor to your brand. And we got down the road. We got things kind of worked out, and I was just going to personally be an advisor. And then I had to make a call to you and like, hey man, I can't actually do this anymore. Things at Front Street are getting too busy, and I need to focus on my brands, my portfolio brands at Front Street, and I can't do the advising thing anymore like I was doing with Dirty Dough and whatnot. And so that sucked for me. I'm like, because I was excited to be a part of this brand and advise and I was enjoying that type of stuff. But Front Street just kind of took off and demanded more of my time, and I felt it was fair to my partners over there that my time wasn't divided, and so I had to say no. But I love the fact that you talked to Bennett. I'm like, hey, talk to Bennett to see what kind of value that I brought him, and now you and Bennett are friends, and you guys get to talk. So I love the fact when brands and founders understand what they don't know, and they understand that there's a lot that they don't know, and they don't even have a clue what that is. And so I think that is amazing advice. Like any franchise founder out there, you should absolutely be talking to somebody that could advise you. Talk to multiple people that could possibly advise you, and talk to the people that they're currently advising or have advised in the past to see how good they are. Because there's a lot of people that say they're really good at this stuff and they're really bad. They give really bad advice and they don't have such a great track record. So there's a lot of individuals out there that have a great track record and they don't charge a lot or don't ask for a lot of upside. So I'd absolutely look at that, because in franchising, the mistakes that you make early on as a brand founder last for the lifetime of your franchise. And most founders are making mistakes with the best of intentions that are having a large impact on the health of their franchisees later on with different ways, and just the value of their brand later on. So anything else that you would kind of say about advisors, or just knowing things, wanting to learn things that you don't know?
Yeah, I think as business owners, especially when it's for me, right? I mean, we thought we had everything set, processes, systems in place franchising is a different animal, right? You're starting a whole new business, right? Your business itself is staying pretty much the same, but your duties and your job and your responsibilities are completely different when you're franchising. So having that advisor or somebody or speaking with other franchisors, I've been fortunate to have a lot of franchisors in Charlotte, North Carolina, like Clean Juice and several other that I've had the ability to speak with. Some guys from Bojangles, which is a bigger franchise fast food chain. Having those just to lean on and bounce off of. One of the best decisions I made was hiring a fractional CMO. I actually just introduced them to Bennett, and it's Momentum Brands. Brooke and Hallie have been absolutely amazing. But yeah, I mean, there's things that you can outsource, not take on a huge cost early on, because money is always tight when you're doing this, and understanding that the value there, even though the cost may seem like a little bit more than what you want to spend at the time, the value there for the growth and the longevity of your franchise is super important.
We are huge believers in fractional C-level talent. I saw Brooke at the Springboard event, and we have a call set up because I want to talk to as many fractional CMOs, CFOs, COOs, CEOs as possible. Because as we grow Front Street, our brand portfolio, the demand for that fractional level talent is just increasing. And I brought on a fractional CMO to both of the brands. She works with both GoGlow and Magnolia Soap and Bath as a fractional CMO, and it's a game changer. They can't afford early on. You can't afford this great C-level talent. You can bring on someone and slap a C-level title on them, but if they've never been a CMO for a number of years at a brand that has been where your brand is going, you're just paying extra money for a title without the experience. And what you want is the experience, and that's where fractional level talent comes into play. So anything else like that you've learned or wish you knew? Maybe territory creation, franchise fees, brokers, anything along those lines that you could give other franchisors that they might even be ahead of where you are right now, Rich, in terms of growth, franchisees, all of this, but they're not ahead of you in terms of what you know and how smartly you're growing the brand.
Yeah, I think some of the best advice I had early on was your first franchisees, your first 5 to 10, be very, very strategic, be very, very picky, because they're going to end up selling your next 50 to 100. So we've tried to do the best job that we can. Early on, it's like you see the money, you see the $60,000 franchise fee, and you're like, all right, we need that. Let's grab it and go. But yeah, we've turned people down that didn't fit our model, that didn't fit our culture. And I think that's something that is very hard early on to really stick to. But it's something, like you said, early on, the decisions you make can affect the future of your entire brand and your growth. So that was one really good piece of advice I've gotten from additional franchisors. Outside of that, I think it's just having a support group, right? You can't do it yourself, right? Having other franchisors, I kind of mentioned this already, but having that support group, people you can lean on, even you, right? You're like, text me anytime. Like, I'll answer any questions you have, even though I'm not advising for you. Having people like that, and in the franchise world, everybody's wanting to help each other. For the most part, I haven't come across anybody that's not willing to help. Even the brokers. So like, if your sales team or your fran dev team wants us to help put systems and processes in place for them, reach out. Almost every broker that I've spoken to has been open to help. So it's just a very small community. Big in the overall brand of franchising across the country is huge, but the community of franchising, you realize that there's a lot of people that you're going to see over and over, and lean on them. Don't be afraid to reach out. Same with me. Anything that I can help with any franchisee or franchisor, lean on me.
When you've been on the receiving end of somebody else advising, helping, giving their advice from experience, or just sharing their experience, you tend to want to do the same thing for other people. And that's what you're hearing from Rich. By the way, I don't give out my cell phone number. Not everybody can just text me whenever. But what I look for, somebody asked me the other day, what do I look for in founders? What do I look for in brands for Front Street? Or before that, what do I look for in brands that I want to advise for? I look for a CEO or founder that is coachable, that is teachable, that understands that somebody else might have the answers around franchising, but they are absolutely the expert in the thing that they have franchised. In your case, Hoppin Brands, brewery, etc. So that's why I said, hey, if you need anything, just let me know. And you've never really taken me up on that, but if you do, I know it's important, and I'm happy to help. So I love that. All right, what was it about Hoppin, or what is it about Hoppin that makes it so franchisable, and why are people wanting to buy?
Yeah, I always tell everybody, you can go get a drink or a beer or a glass of wine or a cocktail from any bar in your city. What separates us from other bars and the industry? One, our technology, right? It's self-serve. You have the ability to pour your own drink or your own cocktail. And then on the flip side, as a franchisor, we're a marketing company. We do all the marketing in-house. There's no marketing that is required from our franchisees except for more of event-driven marketing locally and pulling in corporate events and private parties. And then on the consumer side, we're an experience company, right? We're the Disney or the Chick-fil-A of the elite brands that are providing an experience. Because what is making me go to Hoppin compared to going to the bar down the street to get a Mick Ultra? I want the experience. I want the fun. I want that FOMO. I want to go where everybody else is going. So our team does a really, really good job of the marketing. And then if you're a franchisee or looking to franchise, the overhead is very limited. We have 8 to 12 employees. Most of those 3 of them are full-time. The other are all part-time. Limited overhead, limited staffing. We work with local food partners. So our local food operators, we typically will have either a food truck, a food stall inside the location, or a neighboring restaurant. And anything that goes through our door, we'll collect a revenue off of that, off the top line. So any food that goes through our door, we're collecting off that gross revenue. So it's another revenue stream. Overall, the brand is very simple. We can run a very, very large day and only have 3 people working because we have 60 plus self-serve taps. And it makes it very easy to manage, operate, run for an investor or for somebody that doesn't want to be technically in the job working hands-on all the time. Somebody wants to be a good leader and be just an owner, or I always say investor manager opportunity, where you want to invest in an opportunity. You don't want to run it. You want to hire a manager, but you also want to be involved high level because your culture or you're that person that wants to bring people in together in the community. And it's an opportunity that allows that. I've always wanted to build something for freedom. After working in the construction industry and having that business, it was 7 days a week, constantly working, constantly phone was off the hook. And I said I would never go into another business that would create that type of lifestyle. Ever since opening our first location, I've really never been in the business working day to day. I have all the freedom in the world to be where I want to work, and that's important.
So you mentioned early on, you were just talking about the customer experience, Disney, you mentioned Chick-fil-A, you mentioned some big brands that have built, an amazing business. And looks like you've got cool branding. It looks like you've thought about branding quite a bit. So is that true? And if it is, which I'm guessing is true, give us some of your thoughts on branding. How did you come up with the name? When did you invest into somebody making a great logo, and then just thinking about the customer experience and all that? And has that evolved as you thought about franchising it? Did you level that up at different times? Because there's a lot of brands out there that have poor branding, and then they continue to make it better and level it up at different times. I think that's completely fine and completely normal. But some brands that we talk to, they just don't give branding much of a look. They don't think it's that important. And if branding is not that important to a franchisor, that's not a brand that we really want to get involved with at Front Street. So, how did you come up with the branding, and how did you go about that at Hoppin?
Yeah. So finding the name of any business, I always feel is hard, right? But it's how do we keep it simple, but something that is a brand. And Hoppin was, anybody in the younger generation was like, oh, that place is Hoppin. What's Hoppin? That's where can we go? That's Hoppin. And then it also plays on beer. Hops are in beer. So both of those kind of came together, and it was a group of people that were all kind of just chatting and writing down stuff, and that name hit and everybody stuck out to it. And then a buddy of mine who made logos for me for the ice cream shops and a couple other businesses created the logo. And since it was self-serve, he's like, let's do a hop as the O. So on my hat, you see our logo, which one day I want this to be like a Nike check where I can wear this hat around and people are like, oh snap, that's Hoppin. I've been to that place. It's awesome. So yes, he added the tap on the hop to make it like more self-serve. So it fits our brand. So our logo is Hoppin, or this is our icon, but our name is Hoppin, and then that's the O in the Hoppin. So the brand overall was, from day one, was important. And then the second thing was, everybody's like, you got to be better than the other bar. I said, we don't have to be better. We just have to be different. If we could be different, we'll be successful, because people always want something different. They want something new. They want something that's innovative and something that is always keeping up with the times. And that's something our marketing team does really, really well. Just with Taylor Swift being super popular, we ran Taylor Swift music bingos, Taylor Swift trivias, and those were some of our biggest weeknights ever. You got 500, 600 females in there screaming at the top of their lungs for Taylor Swift. So brand-wise, super important. Leveling up, yes. We actually just changed our tagline from beer, wine, and good vibes to beer, cocktails, and good vibes, because people think hops or hoppin' and they just think maybe beer. So we added the tagline of having cocktails, since we do have cocktails. And just leveling up the brand overall with our fractional CMO has been something that you really start to see the capabilities of leveling up your brand, because you're so focused on just operations and growth. It's important to have those people to lean on to say, hey, if you miss this now, it's going to be tougher to do later on.
How hard, who came up with, who was the first one that said, hey, you probably need a new tagline? That's, it's probably not, you just need something different. You need something not completely different, but you need something new here. Because founders, from my experience, it's their baby. That brand is their baby, and don't touch it. It's perfect. Don't change the tagline. Don't change the color. Don't change the photos. Don't change anything. It's my baby. It's my brand. I built this thing. I grew it. So was it you that came up with that thought you needed to change something? Or did somebody say, hey, Rich, this might be a better tagline?
It was me. And it was because when we first opened up in 2017, it was beer, wine, and that's it. We didn't have any cocktails. We didn't have a full cocktail bar or mixed beverages. So I'd say a year or so, maybe 2 years after, it was 2020 when we added, December 2020 when we added cocktails. I was like, we really need how are we going to market that we now have cocktails? Because for the last 3.5 years, everybody just said beer and wine. So I started to think about it and just chatted with my team and marketing team, and we never really made the change. And then brought on Brooke and the fractional CMO, and we were just chatting, and she's like, you guys should really change the tagline. And that's when we changed it. It was not that long ago, honestly, maybe 6 months ago, where we actually made the change. So it's definitely something that I thought about and just never pulled the trigger on before without somebody that has the expertise to say, actually make the change. You need to do it.
What's next for you guys? Where do you see yourself in the next year, 2 or 3 years? Where are you guys going?
Yeah, our main focus is the fastest growing cities in the U.S. and then their surrounding sub-markets. We're open to other markets. We just get a little bit more questions and making sure that it will be a good fit for the brand. But that's the first step is the fastest growing cities in the U.S. Right now we have an amazing pipeline. I just actually had a verbal agreement and an FDD sent out for Nashville, Tennessee. So having that growth already starting is important. But next year, goal is to sign another 15 to 20 franchisees. And then year 3, we're looking at 20 to 30. I mean, my goal is to have at least 40 to 50 signed up in the next 2 years. So we should easily hit that. And then my personal goal within the next 4 to 5 years is private equity or VC come in and give us a number. So goal is to grow.
Which is pretty common. I mean, a lot of founders won't say that, but they're thinking that. And that's pretty common because a lot of times, there needs to be some type of exit for even for the franchisees. doesn't necessarily mean it's great for the franchisees, but it could be really good for the franchisees because it's more money coming in, different type of leadership that can take the brand from where it is today to where it needs to go. So I like that you said that. What are your biggest fears? Like, what are this is my last question. What are your biggest fears? What keeps you up at night?
Yeah. And just to touch back on what you were saying, I'm super transparent, and I think that's the best way to be. So franchisees ask any question. I'm very, very open and transparent and letting them know my plan. That way they know, right? Because they can also plan if we were to have an exit or be bought out. Biggest fear for me right now is just kind of the stage of the market we're in, right? It's kind of a double-edged sword. In some ways it's great because people get laid off. They look for new opportunities, which could lead to them wanting to franchise and get out of corporate America. On the flip side, people are a little bit tighter now than they were a year ago. Money isn't coming as easy as it was a year ago. So I think it's just, you franchise something, we get into timing is everything. And that fear of, is this going to take off like I want it to, or I expected it to? And right now everything is lined up to a little bit slower than what I thought, but definitely faster than what I thought, knowing where we are in the economy and inflation and the way interest rates are. So that's probably my biggest fear. Outside of that is as we're growing, I'm very involved. And as we're growing and we get 10, 15, 20 locations open and going, how much involvement can I personally have with each franchisee? And then that's important to me, right? Because I just have that mentor mentality that I want everybody to be successful and have, with all my employees, they have the ability to come in and knock on my door at any time. So having that same leadership and culture from the top as we grow is going to be important to me. But how do I do that to where it still makes sense?
Well, you said you're transparent, open, and honest, and that was a very transparent, open, and honest comment. Not like some founders that may have a different type of comment like that. I fear that I'm going to grow too fast, and everyone's going to make so much money that they're going to do some other things. Like, that's probably not the most transparent comment, but I've heard stuff like that before. So, man, how do people find you? People are interested in following you or learning. Where do they find you?
Yeah, on LinkedIn, just personal or Rich Moyer. You can search me on Google. I'm sure if you just search Rich Moyer or Hoppin, my LinkedIn will pop up. My social media will probably pop up, Instagram, Rich_Moyer. Hoppin, our main page is Hoppin CLT. That was our first location. And then Hoppin Franchise on Instagram. Just search Hoppin. Depending on what site you want to find it on, you're going to find it. Our LinkedIn, we also have Hoppin on there as well. So just overall, just search Rich Moyer Hoppin and the brands on Google, and you're going to find exactly what you want. Our website for franchising is Hoppin Brands, franchising.com or ownahoppin.com.
Dude, everywhere. Just search Hoppin.
Yeah.
Hey, man, thanks for coming on.
Appreciate you having me.
Thanks for listening to the Franchise Secrets podcast. Links to everything can be found over at franchisesecrets.com. And if you want my help with anything from starting your own franchise to growing your current franchise business, please visit scalablefranchise.com.